In a previous video, we uncovered the truth about the Frixion pen markings potentially reappearing. I thought I was pretty thorough, but, well, all of you treasure hardies had one burning follow-up question. What happens when we wash the fabric or the quilt? Now, I'll admit that I didn't want to go into this because there are countless variables that were involved, and it seems like a research rabbit hole. But you asked, and in this video, we're going to get some answers to that question. We'll reveal what happens to those markings when the fabric is washed using various methods and detergents. And we'll also give you an interesting correlation to one of my favorite US national parks and the ingredients in some popular laundry detergent brands. So grab your seam rippers because we are about to open another investigation and live on the bias. Now, just in case you forgot, in the first video, I took some fabric and marked all over it using a Frixion pen. And after ironing it, well, as expected, the markings disappeared. Or more correctly, the ink turned transparent. But then I took those fabrics and placed them in my freezer, and it turned out that the myth is in fact true that cold temperatures will reactivate the ink and the markings will reappear. Then I had some fun and took those same fabrics to a certain store with a walk-in fridge to see what would happen or if I would get the same results. What happened was a little unexpected. So my conclusion was it is possible for the Frixion pen inks to reappear in the cold, but if it's not Antarctica OMG, it's the Ice Age cold, you'll probably be alright. But still, I wouldn't go marking up an heirloom quilt or something that you're going to give to a friend. Now, as soon as that video went live, oh my goodness, everyone and their grandchildren asked the one question, what about putting the fabric or the quilt in the wash? Yeah, that was the one question I hoped all of you wouldn't ask. Why, you say? Let's go back to science class. You see, part of setting up any experiment is identifying variables that can affect the results of your test. For example, the washer itself. Is it front loading or is it top loading? What washer settings are you using? How long does it actually wash before it starts rinsing and drains the water out and does the spin cycle? My favorite part. What about the laundry detergent itself? Is it liquid or powder? How much laundry detergent do you use? And what about when you mix in your regular laundry? I mean, does that affect the results? Not to mention the fact that it was costing me $6.50 to run just one load of laundry at the laundromat at that time. So, I was not willing to bite that much of an expense. Still, though, I feel like I owe it to everyone to at least try and do a few tests just to see if it's possible for laundry detergents to wash out the ink. So I'm going to run some tests using some laundry detergents and try to mimic a washer. But first, let's have a little bit of fun and go on a little adventure because there is an interesting fact that I remembered. And it might be an important factor in all of this. You'll see what I mean. So let's head on out. Now, it's not a secret that one of my favorite national parks to visit is Death Valley. I know the name sounds rather morbid, and on the surface, the place actually does live up to that name, being that temperatures often climb as high as 120 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and the annual rainfall is less than 2 inches. Wow, you see that? 99 degrees. It teeters between 99 and 100. It's kind of teetering between 99 and 100 degrees, but it feels like 1,000 degrees right about now. But there were really two reasons why I took this field trip to Death Valley. Number one, it was actually to see how fast the heat could make the friction pen markings go transparent. Number two was to learn more about the natural mineral that was once mined in Death Valley called borax. Now, I had no doubt in my mind that if I took some fabric pieces and marked it up with friction pens, yeah, the markings would go transparent. It was just a matter of how fast. And boy, it took no time at all. Because just within 5 minutes of leaving them out in the sun at Death Valley, yeah, the markings were gone. Almost immediately, the markings disappeared. So let's check our little experiment here. Almost instantly, the ink kind of just disappeared, and now it's completely gone. Wow. Okay, so I wish I had a temperature check in this car because it's pretty hot right now. The geology, landscape, and history behind this area is quite fascinating. You see, Death Valley is surrounded by dormant volcanoes. Now, I'm no expert geologist, but I do know one thing. Wherever there's a dormant volcano and lava that was cooled off for millions and millions of years, well, there's also an abundance of natural minerals. In fact, scattered in and around Death Valley are the ruins of old mines and mining towns. One of the visitor attractions within the park is the old Harmony Borax Works mine. Now, in the late 1800s, it was discovered that Death Valley had deposits of borax. Once that discovery was made, oh boy, operations to mine the borax began, thus leading to the creation of Harmony Borax Works mine. Borax is a natural mineral commonly used in many household cleaning products. Even today, borax or some variation of borax is incorporated in many cleaning products. But more specifically, laundry detergents often have borax and bleach mixed together. The combination is like a 1-2 punch in getting your clean or getting your clothes clean. So this random field trip to Death Valley that I planned actually turned out to be very educational and very relevant to this topic at hand. Now, in the scientific community, borax is technically known as sodium tetraborate. I hope I'm saying that correct. I was curious to see what brands of cleaning products list borax as one of its ingredients, and to my surprise, there's actually a large handful of products that use borax, or some variation thereof. So I went to a local dollar store and purchased a laundry detergent that I know contains borax, and another one that doesn't. And coincidentally, I did find a brand name product of just straight borax. Now I'm going to use these laundry detergents and this name brand borax and use these in varying ways to see if they will actually, in fact, get the friction pen markings out of the fabric. So let's begin our tests. It's laundry day, so let's head on down to the laundromat and let's do our first experiment. So it's laundry day and I'm heading to the laundromat right now. I figure if I have to wash my clothes, I might as well do my first experiment with these friction pen markings. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take those fabric pieces that have the friction pen markings all over it, and I'm just going to incorporate it into my regular laundry and see how well the laundry detergent actually gets those markings out. Now, the detergent that I'm using is just a generic brand. It's the one that I normally use. I don't believe that it does have any borax in there, but hey, this is just a test, right? So we'll see how well the laundry detergent or how well those markings will come out. Quite honestly, I'll be very shocked if the markings completely go away or get washed out because, well, sometimes pen markings are just really stubborn. And if they do in fact go away, then I know I got a very good laundry detergent, even though it is a generic brand. There they are. So let's put it in. And let's get some other things in there. Okay, everything's in the wash. Now we just wait. Well, it was going to be a while for the washers to finish, so I figured now would be a good time to catch up on some YouTube videos. And before I knew it, the washers were done. So I put the laundry in the dryer, well, except for the fabric pieces. I figured the heat from the dryer would make the markings go transparent and render this whole experiment void. So instead, I just put those fabric pieces aside to let them air dry. But I already knew the results because the markings were still visible. Sidebar, 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 sidebar. I hate folding socks. Whenever I wash socks, there's always a complete pair that go into the washer, but somehow when you finish washing and drying, half the pair goes missing. You don't know how it happened, so you just throw up your hands and say, whatever. But then, by some miracle, the planets lined up, the missing sock cut off its own legs, and the laundromat god started singing, ah! And you find the missing sock. I just wish the same would happen to the Frixion pen ink. Oh well, just throw your hands up again. So we're back from the laundromat, and these fabric samples have had time to air dry. So let's have a look at the results here. So it's a little weird that some of these bigger pieces, I mean, like this piece, yes, the ink markings totally disappeared just with the regular wash. On this piece, you can kind of see that there's a little bit of the orange there, or maybe that was the red. But definitely on the smaller samples, yeah, you can definitely see that it has not completely washed out the markings there. So it's a little interesting and a little bit of a mixed bag of results. Now, let's try one thing. So if I iron this, does it actually still go away or go transparent? Yep, look at that. The markings just about go transparent when you do hit it with the iron again. And it's something that, well, you know, you kind of expect it because it was doing that before. So there we have it. The samples are back to normal. So a little bit of a mixed bag of results. What I am going to do though, now I pulled out a bunch of sample fabrics here, kind of a wide variety of different types of fabrics. So let's start with this here. This is actually 100% cotton, but it's not of the highest grade cotton. It's kind of like I can basically hold it up and I can kind of see right through the fabric here. So that tells me that it's not a high grade of cotton, I guess is how you would say it. So I'm going to actually just use this as one sample. Now this particular fabric here, it is a pretty decent, like premium quality fabric. Again, it's cotton. And because I can't really see through it, I know that it's pretty like a high grade of cotton or good quality fabric. And the feel of it, like you can kind of definitely tell that it's pretty thick and again, just a premium quality fabric. This fabric here is almost, it's like a linen. So I'm going to use this and I can definitely kind of see right through it. It's almost like, it feels like a bed sheet. So I'll use these as samples again. Same thing with this. I believe this is a higher grade of cotton. It's just a solid white fabric here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these samples. We're going to mark it with some various Frixion pens here. Now, some of these samples are going to get put through with just straight up borax. Some of the samples I'm going to do a combination of borax and a laundry detergent, and one of them I'll just do a mixture of just the laundry detergent. I'm also going to throw in, just for experimentation's sake, I'm going to use these fabrics here because they are heavily printed, and I'm kind of wondering if on a pen like this, where it's a high contrasting color, is it going to show up, or is it going to kind of just hide in the background or within the print of the fabric? So I'll use that. I also got this here, just for experimentation's sake. Now, this is not a Frixion pen. This is just a regular ballpoint pen, in which I believe the ink is water-based. So it might come out, it might not come out. But I'm going to take one of the fabric samples. I'm just going to mark it up. And if the laundry detergent, or if any of the laundry detergent, the borax, whatever I put on it, if this sample, the ink comes out, then you know for a fact that there's a good chance that the Frixion pens might get washed out as well. So I will mark these with putting X's in the corner. And I'll do a few of them. I figured that you don't want to watch me color and make beautiful artwork for the rest of this video, so I thought I should speed through this part and give you the gist of what I'm doing. I'm marking each of the fabrics with various Frixion pens. I divided the fabrics into groups with one piece of each of the different types of fabrics that I pulled. Then I'll use the various cleaning products and methods to get the pen markings out. So let's skip this boring coloring lesson and get to the fun part. Now, according to the directions on the back of this box, I'm supposed to take half a cup of borax and pour it into 12 ounces of warm water. Yeah, we're not going to do that because that's just going to be way wasteful for the purposes of what we need to do. So instead, I'm just going to take a tablespoon of borax and we'll mix it in with half a cup of water, warm water. So here's my tablespoon. And let me pour out half a cup of water. Move that to the side for a second. Yep, this is totally scientific, right? Okay, and I got a little bit of I got a toothbrush here that we're going to scrub this with. So I'll just pour that in there. Let's mix this around. Well, that dissolved pretty quickly. So that's pretty warm water. I'm wondering if the heat from the water is actually going to make the ink marks go transparent. Let's see. Nah, it doesn't appear to be doing anything. Oh, wait, it is coming out a little bit, but not significantly a lot. It might just be because, well, I'm getting the fabric wet, and so it just looks like I am. Wait a minute, wait a minute. It is kind of coming off when you scrub it. It's kind of coming off, but not really. We'll, let me see if I can get this side a little bit, hit it a little bit more. Let me grab a little bit more of the borax. Got a 1/4 teaspoon. Let me just sprinkle it directly on there, see what happens. And let's scrub, scrub, scrub. And it appears that the lighter marks do in fact come out, but the darker marks are not. You can still kind of see a little bit of it on there. Let's try it again. Or maybe it's the heat of the water that's actually getting it. I'm going to call this one a fail because I would not want to be scrubbing a whole quilt. Now, this is just a small, teeny tiny, I mean, I don't think this is even a 2-inch square here, but this is a small, teeny tiny piece of fabric here. Can you imagine having to do this with an entire quilt? Yeah, scrubby, scrubby, no thank you. Let me just soak that back in the water. Oh, well, what do you know? Look at that. When I put it in the water, I think it's the heat that's making it go transparent, because now the markings are not as visible. It's the heat of the water that's actually doing that. Okay, let me kind of clean up that. Oh, well. Hey, might as well try this. Is that going to actually get it out? Let's see. Actually, I picked up some of the texture on the board, so that's not a good idea. Okay. Yeah, that's a fail. One of the interesting things that I have seen people do, especially on YouTube tutorials, is they will actually mix borax with some, this is some basic dishwasher, or not dishwasher soap, but dish soap. So I got a 1/2 teaspoon of dish soap in there. Let's put that in the mix. See if that does anything. And we'll mix it up. Making a bigger mess on this table, if anything. And if that doesn't work, or if this doesn't work, maybe a little bleach would help. No, it's not that much better. Well, actually, it did do a little better. Okay. But again, I think that's more or less the heat of the water kind of coming through. Maybe I should have just done this with cold, regular tap water. It is coming, well, it does appear to be coming off though. It could just be the heat of the water. Yeah, I think it definitely is. Now, you can still kind of see it. I mean, some of the darker spots are definitely not coming out. Yeah, call this a fail. Let's just see if this bleach will get it out. Okay, now with bleach, you don't need a whole ton of it, and this stuff is toxic, so definitely don't try and inhale it. We'll do a 1/4 teaspoon of bleach in there. That's good. No, definitely does not look like the bleach is making an impact on it. Well, again, it was kind of a small amount. So just with borax by itself, it's not going to get the stains out, because you can still see trace amounts of the markings a little bit there. Now, I have a suspicion that part of the reason why it appears that some of the ink is kind of gone or washed out is just the fact that the heat of the water made that kind of disappear or go transparent. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take these 2 samples. I'm going to rinse these out because you can kind of still feel the film of the borax on there. We'll rinse it out. We'll hit this with the iron so that it'll dry these 2 pieces, and we'll put it back in the freezer to see if the markings actually do come back again. And if they in fact do, then we know that the heat from the water is what made the inks go transparent and make it appear that it washed out. So let's go do that, and we'll come right back. All right, this is a little bit bonkers because, you know what, I'm not even going to describe it, just have a look. So these are the two fabric pieces that I washed it with a little bit of borax and a little bit of the bleach, mixed it in that container, and look at this. I mean, there's absolutely not really any trace of any of the markings. Well, I shouldn't really say that because there is a faint trace of like a little bit of a brown kind of color. I don't know if the camera can capture that, but it's so weird because when I was using the little toothbrush and scrubbing it, and the markings were still there, and I put in the Clorox, put in the borax, none of that worked. But as soon as I took it to the sink, put it through the cold wash, and then hit it with an iron just to dry out the fabric. Of course, the fabric markings kind of disappeared at that point. Then I left it in the freezer for about 20 minutes or so, took it out, and I couldn't even believe my eyes that the fabric markings were not there. Now, I thought maybe the freezer wasn't cold enough. Maybe it needed to stay in there longer. So put it back in the freezer for another 20 minutes. Still didn't come back. Now, I don't know what exactly made it disappear, but somehow these markings disappeared on this batch. So, very, very interesting. But again, it did leave like a very small hint of this brown marking. I don't know if it's because of the stain of the wood that I had it on or what's causing that. Maybe it is the markings themselves. So, we'll call this one a draw, maybe. I mean, it did make the markings kind of go away, but then it introduced something different. So maybe we'll just call this one a draw. After doing this initial test and seeing the result, I did not know what to expect when it came to testing the laundry detergents. Honestly, I thought that each of these laundry detergents were going to fail, but after the surprise results from the borax and the dish soap mixture, I thought maybe there's hope. So I pressed on and continued with more tests. This time, instead of using straight up borax, I would use the different laundry detergents that I picked up from the dollar store. First up was the Gain, which, according to its list of ingredients, it does contain borax. So I put a group of fabric samples into a mason jar and added some hot water and gave it some of the Gain laundry detergent. I closed the jar and gave it a good shake. I did the same thing using another laundry detergent. This time it was the Arm & Hammer with OxiClean, which, according to its list of ingredients, does not appear to use borax. And I used a third generic brand of detergent, the same one that I took to the laundromat, and, well, you already seen the results. Now, after shaking each of the sample groups in the mason jar, I pulled each of the fabric samples from the jars, and to my surprise, some of the samples came out totally clear, with the exception of the control pieces that I marked with just a regular pen. I rinsed each of the fabric samples, then hit it with an iron to get it dry fast. Finally, I placed each of the samples into the freezer and left it in for a little over an hour. And the end result kind of surprised me. So first of all, let's talk about this control sample group. Now remember, this is the sample group that I just used a regular pen and just marked all over it. And the idea of this was that if the pen markings came off of this control sample group, then the Frixion pens would not stand a chance. But as you can kind of see here, and as expected, the markings didn't really go away. They're still there, they're still visible, clearly visible. And yeah, so this was no big no big surprise with this. So these are the samples that came off from the Frixion pen markings. Now, I don't know if you can pick up on this, but the camera might not be able to see it, but on these white fabrics here, you can kind of see trace amounts of the Frixion pen still there, but I don't know if the camera can pick up on that. It's a little, I mean, there's a trace amount of it on this white fabric. And then on the printed fabrics, you really can't tell that the markings were even there, or if there's a trace of it, it's not very visible. Interestingly though, on this sample here, I don't know if the markings, I mean, you really can't see it. The markings could still be there, they're just not visible, and that might be because of the color or the dye in the fabric. I mean, I don't know if it's, I mean, it just looks like the markings kind of got washed out, but who knows, they could still be there. Just looking up close at some of these print fabrics here, the markings just don't seem to be there. So what conclusion can we actually draw from this experiment? Does the Frixion pen markings actually disappear when you put your quilt or your fabrics in the wash? And the answer that I found, no, it does not. There are going to be trace amounts of the fabric markings or the Frixion pen markings still left on the fabric. Now, if the fabric is a busy print, if it's very colorful, then chances are you're not going to notice the Frixion pen markings. But if your fabric is like a solid white color, yeah, there's a good chance that even after putting those fabrics or that quilt in the wash, you are still going to see those markings. Now, again, what you could do is just hit it with the iron again, but well, that's just an extra step in which I wouldn't want to do that. Would I put this on a quilt that's going into a show? If this is going to be a quilt that I'm going to give to a friend, if this is going to be some kind of an heirloom or some kind of special quilt, would I recommend you use the Frixion pen on the quilt top? Definitely not, because of the fact that there's the potential for the markings to reappear. I just would not want to risk it personally and mark up or put any Frixion pen markings on there. Now, if I'm using the Frixion pen to mark the wrong side of the fabric, say if you want to mark your sewing lines or you want to mark your cut lines, then in those cases, yeah, I would use the Frixion pen because it's going to be on the inside of the quilt and chances are it's not going to be visible. But again, if this is going to be some kind of special quilt, yeah, I wouldn't use the Frixion pen on the quilt top. It's just going to be too risky in my opinion. Well, I hope this experiment gave you some little bit of an answer to that ultimate Frixion pen question of whether or not it's going to wash out when you put it in the laundry. Based upon my findings, no, it won't. But if you have a Frixion pen, I would highly encourage you to run your own experiment. Get a fabric sample and mark it up and put it in the wash. See what happens. Does your detergent actually get the Frixion pen out? You might come out with a different end result in which, again, those other variables that come into play might influence the results that you get. So don't take this as a definitive answer, but just take it as a suggestion. Well, that's it for this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications on when I upload my next video. And if you're not a member of the Treasure Heart Creations Facebook group yet, let's get you signed up. Link is in the description box below. Well, that's it for now. Let's all get out there and let's all create something.